And this is the story that has me fired up first tonight. Great to have you with us this evening on The Ed Show. Here's the bottom line. The bottom line from the President of the United States: we don't trot this stuff out as trophies. That's it. The Commander-in-Chief has spoken. He's made the big decision based on national security interests. President Obama said today that the United States government will not release the death photos of Osama bin Laden. The president broke the news on a taped interview with 60 Minutes to air Sunday. Interviewer Steve Croft. They did it this afternoon.
Did you see the pictures?
Yes.
What was your reaction when you saw them?
It was him.
Why haven't you released them?
You know, we discussed this internally. Keep in mind that we are absolutely certain this was him. We've done DNA sampling and testing. And so there is no doubt that we killed Osama bin Laden. It is important for us to make sure that very graphic photos of somebody who was shot in the head are not floating around as an incitement to additional violence, as a propaganda tool. You know, that's not who we are.
So did the president make the right call? There he is rendering judgment that it would inflame the Muslim world and really serve no purpose. The president is basically, I think, telling the American people and the rest of the world the integrity of the mission can stand on its own merits. The photo will not be released. It's gruesome. He is recognizable, no doubt, but taking the moral high ground and respecting the dead and not making a further spectacle of the anguish this country has gone through obviously has taken precedent. The president renders on the side of caution, not to inflame the Muslim world. And I think a lot of Americans are out there tonight saying, I don't know if this is the right thing or not. I'm conflicted by it. I'd like to see the photos. Why? Because I hated that SOB. He killed a lot of Americans, and he has changed our lives when it comes to privacy. And we're going to feel the effects of this for a long time. But I keep thinking about these rallies outside the White House and what we've seen here in New York about young people responding to this and how many folks in their 20s were, 10, 11, 12 years old, 13 years old when this happened, and they were affected by this. They have spent the latter part of their life thinking about terrorism and Osama bin Laden, and maybe this would give closure to some people. But I think the president's judgment and the way he has handled all of this, he deserves the benefit of the doubt that this is the right thing to do. If you're scoring at home, this president has done a lot of good things when it comes to fighting terrorism. The surveillance has been picked up. The drone strikes have been much greater than what the Bush administration did. The intel is being collected, and the big prize, Osama bin Laden. So now the president is making another judgment call that if we show this, it could inflame the rest of the world against America. Taking the high ground is what this president has been all about all along on many issues. He's tried to negotiate on a number of different fronts. I think this is a tough call. I want to see it, but I have to put selfish reasons aside and know that this is the right thing to do for the United States. Now, if there's going to be some controversy out there, it should stop at the water's edge when it comes to politics. But there are some out there who want to inflame the debate, so to speak. This is Lindsey Graham, senator from South Carolina, who has been on the Senate Armed Services Committee for some time.
I know he's dead, but I do believe it is in our national security interest to prove it beyond any reasonable doubt.
Prove it? Prove it? Or are you suggesting, Senator, that maybe our military doesn't tell the truth? Are you questioning the character of those SEALs who risked their lives on this mission? That's taking it a little bit too far, isn't it? This is Mike Rogers, who told our Lawrence O'Donnell on The Last Word tonight. He is the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee. He talked to him and said that he did see the photos.
Chairman Rogers, you said today that you agree with the president's decision not to release the pictures of Osama bin Laden. Have you seen those pictures?
I have. I just talked to a soldier today who served after the Abu Ghraib pictures came out. And their units, right the day and the days subsequent, were reminded that it is likely to get more dangerous. They had to double their first aid kits. They had to double their patrols, spend more time on patrols, and violence had an uptick. And when you look at that and you say, what value do we have in showing this photo? It's just we don't need to add to that soldier's difficulty.
That soundbite is golden, and I'll tell you why. Because now the president can say to the American people in the world, we've been down this road before and mistakes were made. It was harder on our troops. And I thought the Republicans just loved the troops. I thought that the conservatives out there were always out there saying they support the troops. Could it be offered up tonight that the President of the United States is supporting the troops and making their mission a little bit easier by not inflaming the rest of the world by releasing these photos, as we've been down this road with Abu Ghraib before? Once again, the smart guy, the President of the United States, I call him the smart guy. I like his academic background. He makes the right call again. And even though there's going to be a divided country and conversation in this country about it, I think that he deserves more than the benefit of the doubt. This was the right call. Get your cell phones out. I want to know what you think. Tonight's question, did the White House make the right decision by not releasing the photo? Text A for yes, text B for no to 622-639, and you can always go to our new blog at ed.msnbc.com. We will bring you the results later on in the show. Now, joining me tonight, a couple of congressional members. Congressman Adam Smith of Washington, ranking member on the House Armed Services Committee, and agrees with the president, and Congressman Adam Schiff of California. Mr. Schiff serves on the Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence, and he thinks the president should have released the photo. Gentlemen, thanks for your time tonight. First, you, Congressman Schiff from California, why do you think the president should have released the photos when obviously we know what happened when the Abu Ghraib photos were released and how much problem that caused?
Well, Ed, thank you. And I share your respect for the president. This was a very tough call. You can tell that from the fact that the outgoing defense secretary had one view and the incoming defense secretary had a different view. I came out on a different side of on this from the president for this reason. We killed Osama bin Laden, the man. But if there's a question about whether he's truly dead in the view of many in the rest of the world, the myth of bin Laden will live on. And I think that we took extra risks by not simply using a predator to take out that compound because we wanted proof that it was bin Laden, not just for us, but for the rest of the world. I'd like the rest of the world to see how bin Laden was living. Here he was posing as this austere person living in a cave, but in fact he's living in a mansion in Abbottabad, Pakistan. I'd like the world to see how he lived and also that he died. To put an end to this myth of bin Laden, someone who is beyond capture, beyond killing. I think that's an important national security objective. It's not, in my view, about having a trophy or anything demeaning like that, but rather make sure we put an end to the myth. And one last point, Ed. I wish the White House hadn't been so unequivocal on this because events may force their hand. If, for example, a couple months from now, Al-Qaeda releases another video, one they've had in the can of bin Laden giving a speech. Those aren't dated. It will once again give vent to this conspiracy theory he is still alive. And then we're in the position of having analysts go on the air and say, well,
sure, from
the position of the sun, we can tell this wasn't taken when it was supposed to be taken, or he makes no comments about recent events. So that's what I think advancing these photographs would accomplish.
Congressman Smith, Congressman Schiff said a lot there. Why do you disagree?
Well, first of all, let's be clear. There is no question that Osama bin Laden is dead. Man, myth, dead. No question, no doubt. I don't think any of us should be raising any questions, any doubts about that. I mean, we both, Adam and I, received briefs at different times on this. They tested this about 10 different ways, DNA, photographic analysis. He is dead. No question about it, no doubt. We should not allow there to be any doubt, photos or no photos. I mean, the conspiracy theorists, you could release whatever you want to release, they'll still, concoct those conspiracies.
But what about the national security interests of not releasing them? And
I agree with that.
Yeah.
I agree with that as well. I agree with what Mike Rogers said. I think if you release those photos, you're not sure where it's going to go. But I think the really big point is here, we can have no daylight on the issue that bin Laden is dead. We have clear, conclusive evidence. Now, I think this is far from the most important debate at this point. I think the fact that we killed him is what we should be focused on, not whether or not we release the photos.
But
I agree with the president's decision.
We can't control conspiracies on the other side of the world, but we can control conspiracies here in America. Does the president not releasing these, render more questions than answers, in your opinion?
No. Assuming we don't have more shows like this where we just talk about it for the sake of talking about it, no, I don't think it does, because the evidence has been presented overwhelmingly, as you yourself said in questioning Lindsey Graham. And for Lindsey Graham to come out and say, well, we have to be sure. We have had high-ranking members of the United States military who witnessed on film him being killed. We have the Navy SEALs who have said, they brought back the information, brought back the evidence. There is no doubt. There is no question. Let's not raise this into more of a debate than it deserves to be. He's dead. It's over and done with.
Congressman Schiff, what do you think the chances are that we're going to have to see these photos down the road to put away any other story that might crop up later on?
Well, I agree with the director of the CIA. I think that's very possible, maybe even likely down the road. As I mentioned, if they do release further videos of bin Laden, it's only going to resurrect this. And the sooner we can nip this conspiracy theory in the bud, I think the better. Ultimately, it's hard to imagine these photos aren't going to be leaked, and I'd rather, frankly, that it was done purposefully rather than being leaked. And I'd rather it was done on our own terms rather than in response to al-Qaeda's action in propagating this myth that bin Laden is still alive.
All right, gentlemen, and stay with us, because I've got another subject I want to bring forward to both of you tonight that just broke before we went on the air. I want to ask you about the Washington Post story saying that senior Republicans are conceding tonight that a deal is unlikely on a contentious plan to overhaul Medicare, and offered to open budget talks tomorrow with the White House by focusing on areas where both parties can get agreement, such as cutting farm subsidies. So this means, as I view this as a liberal, this is a win for the Democrats that Medicare is going to be off the table. Congressman Smith, how do you view this news?
No, I think you're right. I think that is helpful. But let me tell you, the most important thing for progressives and Democrats to do is to more aggressively put the revenue side of this question on the table. Now, I'll admit, with our budget where it's at, there's no question we do have a spending problem in a lot of different places. But what hasn't been talked about enough, in the year 2000, when we had a surplus, revenue to the federal government represented 21% of the GDP.
Yeah.
The last 2 years, it's represented 15%.
Okay.
That's an over 30% drop in revenue. Why aren't we talking about that?
Well, this is a big victory for a lot of middle classers out there. I mean, Medicare is off the table. And then this means you're going to have to go into farm country. That's what they're saying, to get these farm subsidies. What about oil subsidies, Adam Schiff?
Well, to me, the greatest contrast in terms of the budget put forth by the Republicans is the fact that they're unwilling to go after these tax subsidies of the richest industry, making the biggest profits, but they will cut home heating oil assistance for the poor.
Yeah.
Doesn't get a much sharper contrast than that, but Ed, I think you're right. The Republicans have got to recognize now, if not soon, that their proposal to make Medicare into a voucher program is a non-starter. But it does tell us very graphically what this party is all about. And it is not about looking after seniors, particularly the most vulnerable among the seniors who are on Medicaid as well as Medicare.
Yeah, well, Republican leader Eric Cantor tonight saying that they've got to find common ground. So maybe they went a bridge too far on the budget, but they are not going to be going after Medicare and Medicaid. So it sounds to me like the people have spoken, and I keep putting this graph up on this program. 80% of the American people do not want Medicare and Medicaid change. So I think this is a victory for the people and a victory for the Democrats. Congressman Adam Smith of Washington and Adam Schiff of California, great to have both of you with us tonight here on The Ed Show. Thanks so much. Remember to answer tonight's question there at the bottom of the screen. I want to know what you think. Will we have more? We will have more on the President Obama's controversial decision not to release the death photo of Osama bin Laden. That's coming up later. And also, President Obama wants to honor the victims of 9/11 at this national place of honor down at Ground Zero. He will be here later this week. But, of course, he is under attack for his decision to go to Ground Zero tomorrow. Stay with us.